Hi, I wanted to do this quick video on miniature painting. It's basically just kind of a beginner's guide. So if you've never touched miniature painting before, you maybe only took one art class in high school, and that's about your only experience painting or anything, this might be a decent guide to getting started. So just a little background on me. I've been miniature painting now for approximately a year. I'm not going to say I'm a master or anything, but I've learned quite a bit in this year I've been doing miniature painting, and so I'd just share a couple thoughts. So I think the very first thing you should do is pick really a game, a miniature line, or maybe even just a model or two that you would like to try and paint. I think that if you've never touched miniature painting before, you should go on the cheaper end. But really, I mean, if you want to dive in straight away to Warhammer, I mean, that's okay. That's your choice. I personally don't recommend that, but some people dive right into it. They do just fine, and they like their results just fine. So that's totally okay to do. Personally, I would recommend something more on the cheaper end. A Warhammer model, you know, a single model can go somewhere between like $15 and $30, depending on how big it is. I think that's pretty pricey for just one model. I recommend, either a game such as Zombicide. The reason I say Zombicide first, because it's a relatively cheap game for what you get. It's about $100 MSRP, but online or other shops, maybe on sale, you can get it much, much cheaper than that. And you get, I want to say roughly 60 miniatures or so in it, so you get a lot of practice right out the bat. The other thing you can do too with Zombicide is if you don't even want the game, like zombies aren't your thing, you don't really want to play the game, but you do want to at least try miniature painting, you can buy the expansion sets that are just models, the zombie models. Those are about $25, and you get about 20 miniatures in them. So it's almost $1 per miniature, which is pretty good. Games you can try too. One I recommend is Mansions of Madness. The reason I say that is because the miniature quality itself really isn't that good. And that's good. That works in your favor because you get to experiment a lot. There's not a lack of detail on those miniatures. You can paint on details if you wish, or you can at least try different techniques. I know I've been painting Mansions of Madness lately, and I get to try like new things that, I've tried sheer clothing, which on a more expensive model I might be a little bit wary of actually trying that, but on a small, not so lacking detail model, I'm actually okay with that. And it gives me a chance to try techniques that I wouldn't normally try. Those are probably my top two games. I would say Descent, Journeys in the Dark 2nd Edition is also good. Largely for the same reason as Mansions of Madness. Some of the models lack a little bit of detail, but others are actually quite good, so it's kind of a mix. You can jump in really anything, Cool Mini or not. The models are really fantastic. The games, I particularly like all of their games so far. There's really hasn't been one that I've been absolutely like, oh god, this is the worst game ever. So if you want a game with cool minis, then that's the company to look for. But you also can practice painting with some pretty cool, cheap miniatures. And those are plastic. If you want to jump more into resin or metal, that's a whole different thing. I really wouldn't recommend starting with those because you have to assemble, fill in the gaps, and things like that if you really want those miniatures to like pop when you're done. But I mean, jump in where you feel most comfortable jumping in. Oh, and lastly, you can also just go for a single or couple miniatures. There's definitely some miniatures companies out there that sell relatively cheap models. I know Reaper Models is a very good company to jump into. They have pretty cheap models, some more expensive ones, but in general the detail's pretty good on them, and you can use them for just about anything, RPG scenarios, or replace them in other board games. Secondly, I would say after you've chosen your game or your model or your couple of models, I would say then you need, your paint and your brushes. The most basic thing to actually do the painting. Army Painter, one of the big miniature paint companies, sells actually a couple boxes of paint specifically for Zombicide models. With them, you also get one brush. It also comes with oil, so it's a pretty good, decent start. It gives you a nice little range of paints and at least one brush, which is probably really all you need to at least get started and try it out. And if you're going with a different miniature or game whatsoever, you can jump in, with Citadel or Vallejo. They sell paint packs also, which are, you get your base, your primary colors that you can mix and, get to whatever color you possibly could need. They have specific ranges for, like if you're painting a battle tank, they have, I believe tank, or army colored at least. So you have a range of options there, and most of those come with one brush. Maybe not all of them, but at least some do. I think once you've at least tried a model or two, then you can, start getting some more brushes, maybe a dry brush, your wet palette, etc., etc. But at least, your first one, I think really you just need just a couple paints and at least one brush just to kind of give it a shot. Thirdly, I'd say just, jump in, try it. Paint one model, see what happens. I know, I look back now at my first models, and I'm kind of shocked at them. I remember when I first painted them, I was like, wow, this is really cool. I actually painted in the lines, the detail kind of popped. But I go back now and I'm like, wow, all the stuff I've learned since then, it's like night and day. Those look almost atrocious to me now. And this is where I think, after you've at least just tried it, just see where you are. See how much instruction you need, see what you might know. The mistake I made is after I painted a few models is I instantly went to comparing myself to Grandmaster painters. And I was just like, oh man, my miniatures they don't look as cool. What, why? And it was very frustrating. Big thing, don't start comparing yourself. If it's your first miniature, it's probably going to not be so good. To you, it will look excellent. But, once you start comparing yourself, it's going to look probably atrocious. Unless you're somehow starting at Grandmaster level. After you have that first model or two, you can do a little bit of comparing, just kind of see maybe what things you need to learn. But like I said, don't go too deep into the comparison. There's so many YouTube channels out there that are specifically devoted to just miniature painting. There's many with tutorials. There's some where you can just watch people paint. There's some that give you just kind of more hints and tips than even this video. Really dive in there. Depending on what miniature line you're decided to paint with. This one I would totally recommend. I've used it many, many, many times. Is Sarastro's painting. His big ones right now are Zombicide and it's Star Wars Imperial Assault, which is actually another pretty good one to start with. He's got, for Imperial Assault, roughly, I think, 35 videos at the point of this filming. So that's, approximately 35 models to paint. Way many other channels out there. Warhammer's got its own channel, too, if you want to jump in there. Some people have put videos for Mansions of Madness. Some have put for Descent. There's just numerous videos out there, and you can learn lots of different little techniques on dry brushing or highlighting or mixing or using a wet palette. Just lots of little instruction that is good to go into, especially after you've gotten going, kind of know where you stand. I feel it's best to just kind of jump in and try it, see if you even like it before you really start deep diving into how many brushes am I going to need, what's a wet palette, how many types of paint am I going to need, what's the best paint company to use, all that sort of stuff. I recommend just going with those. I think that's it for this video. I just really wanted sort of a quick jump into miniature painting. I may do more videos as time goes on, show off some of my models and go more in depth on like how I got to those colors, why I chose certain colors, etc. But not sure on that. But if you like this video, you want more of it, just like and subscribe. Tell me in the comments. Be happy to film more as I go along. Thanks.